Hey guys, this is Fergal from Poker VIP, and we are back for part 4, the finale of Fergal's top tips for poker success. As per the previous 3 episodes, we have been playing over on GUTS Poker on the anonymous tables, so part of the MPN network. We are playing 2 tables of 20 NL, and because I wanted to get the video recorded including the same session, there was no full tables that we could fill up our third table at 20 NL, so we've jumped up and we're going to be playing one 50 NL table. So hopefully we get involved with some interesting spots down here especially, but these 2 up here are going to be the 20 NL tables. So without further ado, we will jump straight into the action. And as per previous videos, there are going to be a few key core areas that we'll be focusing around today. So as mentioned already, we're playing on the anonymous tables. So we're going to be playing without a HUD or any of that sort of stuff. So we're going to be focusing on playing just a solid, fundamentally sound game of poker. So we're going to be focusing on having solid pre-flop ranges, on when to bet for value, understanding our opponent's bets, what they represent, understanding our own relative hand strength on various board textures, and how we use position to our advantage. So here is a prime example of this. So we have pocket 9s here. We decided to flat an early position open, fairly standard. We're certainly not folding pocket 9s on this board. Obviously there's a 1 over card, which is not, definitely not a bad flop for pocket 9s. But you know, he's not going to show us a jack here tons and tons and tons. We're happy to check back here, use our positional advantage to pot control. And betting here, it seems very optimistic to think that we're going to get paid by that much worse. I don't think he's going to hero us with ace high, because we just flat called in position on the flop. So I think we almost always have showdown value here, and I just don't think he calls us down with ace high. So if he has a hand like, say, pocket 7s, he might call, but even then it's a bit of a stretch because our line looks quite strong. So we're going to just check it down and take our showdown value, because I just don't think that we can bet for value in that scenario, because there's so few hands that I think he's going to call us with. We flop top pair, good kicker over on the top right table, which is absolutely fine and dandy with us. We're going to check call again here. And we're going to lead river. I think he's going to check back all of his worst king X. I don't think he's going to bluff here if he has a non-showdown value hand. So if he has a hand like, say, king 10, king jack, anything like that, we want to charge it. So we're going to bet ourselves for value. I think he's going to be checking back all of those hands. And as I said, I just don't think people will... we've shown a decent amount of strength. So if we just check to him again there, I don't think he's going to be bluffing very frequently at all. And we do get paid, which we like. So I'm assuming he had a worse king. Seems like the likeliest. So a reasonable start. We lost a stack towards the end of part 3. Overall, I'm not entirely sure how we fared throughout part 3. We're in or around even, I think. And with the couple of pots that we've won there, I think we're up for the day so far. And with the rakeback, we definitely are. The rakeback structure on MPN is very, very generous when you sign up through Poker VIP, which is pretty damn awesome. The king and the tray and the big blind, not much we're going to be able to do here. If there's like a min raise in the button, we'll consider flicking in the chips, but we're going to be folding here far more often than not. He 3x is a pretty trivial fold. And the deuce tray for the button in the top right, not much we're going to be able to do here. At the 50 NL table, if it's folded to us, we will go for a steal. We do have to be conscientious of the player to our immediate left, though, is very short, which is kind of annoying. Having short stacks at the table kind of just sort of changes the game dynamics quite a lot. We have to adjust our ranges a little bit to account for he's going to be kind of jamming a little bit wider than average. We are still going to be opening a hand like Queen 8 from the button though. We flop top pair, which is a fine result. We are going to bet it for value. We're going to be stealing here from the button if it's folded to us. And we're happy to throw in the ISO here. When this guy limps, something that I reiterate this quite a lot in all of my videos, anyone who's open limping, you can fairly safely assume that they're not one of the better players. So you definitely want to be going out of your way to play in as many pots as you can against them. This is a board who favours our range a lot more than it does our opponents after he limp calls, so we're definitely going to have a bet, and he just clicks it back on us, which is really tilting. We're getting like almost 5-1, and we have a gut shot to the nuts, and I expect to be able to stack him a lot if he if we do hit, so we're certainly calling. We're not planning on calling on a turn bet, especially when the board pairs. I mean, it's not very likely, but it is possible, theoretically, that we are drawing dead here, but I think it's very unlikely he limp calls aces or jacks or eights. So we're just gonna let it go here. As I said, we aren't getting the right price anymore. I think the turn call is mandatory, or the flop call rather is mandatory though, given the amazingly good price that we're getting. And we're gonna have a bet here. We have some backdoors, and we have ace high, and it's a board that shouldn't have hit our opponent that hard that often. And there are a decent number of cards that we can continue to barrel. This being one of them, so let's have a bet dealer. We take it down, we don't mind that at all. So we almost have the same stack at these two tables, which is always fun when one's a limit lower. So this table has obviously been going swimmingly well so far. We're going to use this hand as a 3-betting position here. Got flat call here as well. Folding seems out of the question to me. Flatting seems pretty reasonable. I prefer 3-betting in these kinds of spots though. Puts our opponent under a lot more pressure. It defines their hand a lot better. And as I said, we get to play with the betting initiative in position, which is always a... when he flat calls, obviously, when we don't get re-raised, which is always a promising proposition. So, interesting flop. If he has a hand like ace king or ace queen, or ace king or ace jack rather, we have gotten there. This is a very strange dunk. We're not folding here, that's for sure. I mean, if he has a queen here, it doesn't really make sense for him to take this line. I don't envision ourselves folding here. There's just too many draws that he can be doing this with. Wow, well played, sir. I was never expecting aces there. I felt it was either ace queen or a bluff. So, shows what we know. We have pocket kings though, so let's go for a raise. See if we can play for stacks versus this gentleman. Or lady, of course. Unfortunately, they go ahead and they fold. So going back to a little bit, just going to go into that hand in a little bit more detail. As I said, I wasn't expecting to ever just flat his strong pocket pairs there. So pocket queens, I felt, is out of the question, and kings and aces. Obviously, that assumption was incorrect, but hey, you have to make assumptions. They're not always going to be correct, but I mean, I felt it was a pretty fair assessment because, like, you know, when someone 3-bets and under the gun range, they're repping a decent amount of strength. So trapping is less, people are less inclined to trap because they think that you've got a pretty strong range and will be going with your hand very frequently. So that was my logic. And as I said, like, we've 3-bet and under the gun open. So like, we have aces, we have kings, we have hands like ace queen, and all those scenarios. So when he dunks out into us, it's just a very peculiar line. So I just didn't believe him. Like, he can have hands like king jack that have a straight draw. He can have ace jack suited. Like, he can have the flush draws, those types of kind of combo draws, all of which might conceivably take that line, and we're ahead of all of his draws essentially. And as I said, I just didn't expect him to be taking that line with his strong value. So not that he wasn't like nutted or anything like that, but he had a very strong hand. So that was my rationale, and unfortunately it proved to be incorrect. But hey, we can't be correct all of the time, right? We can't be correct all of the time, unfortunately. So I think that's probably put us down for the session so far, but we still have about 20 minutes left to go. We'll see if we can muster up a win. Preferably we just stack someone at the 50 NL tables and get up to like €120. That'd be lovely. We'll take the ace queen though, we get a little bit of action. We flop pair, which is fine. We're three-way though, and it's not a very good board in the fact that there is a higher pair possible. 10 jack is conceivable. I feel that there's a reasonable chance this guy bets 10 jack and this guy leads it if he has it. But betting doesn't seem all that attractive to me. We're just going to put in a small raise here for value. If he re-raises, we get quite sad. But, like, I mean, he only min-bets here. He's not showing too much strength, but he might decide to hero us with worse. He can have worse queens as well. He can have, like, queen jack, queen 10, those types of hands. And we do get paid. And we have pocket fours here on a board where, I mean, he's not going to have us beat tons and tons. He will, of course, sometimes. But for pocket fours, out of all of the boards that don't include a 4, this is one of the better ones. Not the best one, obviously, but one of the better ones. We're happy to check this back and pot control this a little bit, though. And we're going to have a c-bet here on the queen high board. And when we get called here and the flush card rolls off, we are not planning on firing any more money into this pot. If this guy fires a second street here, we're just going to let our pocket fours go. So yeah, we're just gonna check this down and expect to lose very, very often. He calls a 2 tray. I wasn't expecting that kind of hand. I did assume we were behind, but I guess that would have been one of the cards, one of the hands that we could have gotten to fold. I think his pre-flop call is certainly liberal, and his flop call out of position is, I mean, it's not crazy, but it seems like it is not going to be particularly good out of position. Now we just have to work it out. We are not getting anywhere close to the right price, so we have to fold, unfortunately. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier on, about this having this dude here. It's kind of tilting because that's just going to happen. I mean, not all the time or anything close to it, but it will happen a reasonable amount of the time, and it just kind of stinks for our hands in general because we're going to be opening relatively wide, and having this guy to our immediate left with the rejam stack is just kind of tilting. He hasn't proven himself to be crazy active though, which is a good thing. Like, he's not, like, you know, maniacally aggressive. So that's definitely a good thing, but we're still not all that happy about the situation. We would much rather, if he was on our right, we wouldn't hate life, and if he just wasn't at the table, if there was a full stack there, that'd be much better. This is a pretty damn connected board all round. We are not going to be firing a c-bet here into two other people. We ain't planning on doing that. And we're just going to let it go when this guy leads. If we were heads up there, I can kind of get on board behind a bet, but honestly, that board is just particularly bad in general. It just connects with so many of people's cold calling ranges. So, yeah, trying to attack it with this kind of combo hand seems like a bit of a spew to me. And the fact that we're multi-way just makes it even worse. Interesting that this guy leads the queen again. Seems like a card that he should be shutting down on pretty frequently. Nice call by 10-9. Nice call. I was thinking his bet just didn't really make that. Like, it's so hard for him to have a hand that he wants to bet twice there on that kind of run out. So I understand the inquisitive call by 10-9. I'm not convinced that it's amazingly good or anything close to it, but I definitely understand it. If this guy was full stacked, we could consider squeezing here. For a €20 stack though, it just gets a little bit dicey because he's got a pretty good 4-bet rejam stack. If we squeeze here, we'll be making it like, say, 650, something like that with the extra caller behind, and it just means his risk to reward ratio is pretty good if he just rips it, which he does, and he has the ace-king. Ace-9 is in trouble, and that we had one of his outs. That's a pretty good example of kind of spots where you build your edge, essentially. Like this guy getting it in with ace-9 there, I feel was pretty atrocious. Given that he only had €10, I mean, it's a little bit more understandable, but I don't think it's good. I think there are definitely way better hands that he can be doing it with. So we don't hate having this guy here anymore because he's proven himself that he does get it in light. So, I mean, that's not a disaster for us. So we'll just have to adjust our calling ranges versus him when he does go for it. 4-5 obviously ain't nothing we're going to be able to do there. So we're halfway through the final part, and so far we haven't had any particularly large wins, which is never fun, but we have lost a stack. Never what you want when you're recording a video, but hey. As anyone who plays poker with any degree of frequency will realise, you cannot win every session, unfortunately. You can win the majority of them, but certainly not all of them. And by the majority, I mean over 50%, not like an overwhelmingly large majority. Unfortunately, if you're playing poker, you are going to have a reasonable number of losing days, which is the sad truth, but hey, that's what keeps the bad players coming back though, am I right? We're going to bet here for protection. Our hand rates to be ahead pretty frequently here. And we have top 2 on the top right table, which we like. There's a decent number of cards that we don't want to see, so we're going to size up from the half size pot a little bit. Make sure that we charge his potential draws. I didn't realise he was this short actually. If I'd looked at his stack size, I probably wouldn't have bothered sizing up. A trivial call here, obviously. If he has his beat, he has his beat. He has the gut shot, which has turned into an open ender, which has not gotten there. We have filled up, which we like. Questionable jam, at best. And we are going to 3-bet the ace and the queen. Take it down, no fuss, no muss. The 9 and the deuce, this guy is limping, but I mean, we're getting, what are we getting, like 8 or 9 to 1 here on our money, but we still, or sorry, no, not quite that good, but we're still getting a very good price, but calling here would still just be an absolute spew, because there are just so few good flops for us. Like, we need to flop minimum 2 pair to be willing to put any more money in the pot, basically, and that's just not going to happen anywhere close to often enough. And even, like, say if we do flop 2 pair, if any sort of substantial amount of money goes in, when it's a limped 4-way pot, like, 9 deuce rates to be like bottom 2 pair pretty frequently, or certainly not the nut 2 pair anyway. So if we manage to get stacks in on a, like, you know, a 9 deuce ace board, it's not gonna end too well a lot of the time. Like, some people can definitely overvalue ace king or ace queen, but if like all of the money goes in, a weak 2 pair doesn't tend to do particularly well. So like really we kind of want trips, and that's just, you know, that's just being way too optimistic. So even though it's just a small kind of half a blind to chip in, it's just not going to turn a profit, and the reverse implied odds kind of do work against you in that sort of situation, which is kind of annoying. That's definitely a mistake a lot of people make early on though when they kind of start out in poker. They just they complete way too wide and just justify it by saying, oh, but pot odds, like, you're getting a really good price. But in actual reality, while yes, you are getting a very good price, it's also going to be like those types of hands, they just behave, they play so incredibly poorly post flop that it's, even with the amazingly good price, the fact that you're out of position facing 3 other opponents is just a recipe for disaster. Bit of a pot brewing up on the top right table. Very decent chance this player will be jamming all in here. He checks, and a check. Pocket kings, that makes sense for sure that he doesn't decide to jam all in there. Would have been interesting if this guy had jammed though. What does this guy do? I didn't see the exact action, but I'm guessing it went raise, 3-bet call, bet call, bet call, and then check, check, I would assume. We defend blind versus blind very wide, but queen deuce, again, one of those hands that we're not planning on doing it too often. King queen though rates to be a hand we play pretty frequently. The 4 and 5, nothing we're going to be doing, and let's see if this big blind decides to defend. If he 3-bets, we're going to call. If he calls, we are going to decide our action based on the flop, obviously. So let's go ahead and see a flop. We flop top pair, which is pretty good. Certainly don't have the nuts or anything close to it, but we have a hand that we're going to be seeing some turns with anyway. He's gone pretty large, which doesn't fill my heart with joy, but hey. We're very deep here as well, which is good. Things could get a little bit dicey. Blind versus blind, though. I'm not in the habit of folding top pair too frequently. We shall see, though. If he bets huge, we're really not going to like life at all, but we shall see. I think it's pretty unlikely that he chooses that sizing on the flop with a jack. You can have like hands like ace-queen. We do block ace-queen. It's really, really hard to envision he has many worse hands that can call a bet here. I think we're just going to check and see if we can get him to bluff a hand like ace-queen. I mean, if he has like pocket tens, pocket eights, anything like that, I assume he's going to fold, even though there is potential flush draws there. I just think our line is too value heavy there. When we check call, check, and then lead river, it just looks for like it's for value very, very frequently. And by checking there, he can have some flush draws that he decides to check back and elect to see, like just to realize his equity for free. And if we check to him there, he might elect to bluff said flush draws. And as I said, I just don't see him having too many hands that can call a bet. And it's possible he's like slow playing a hand like ace king there. It's entirely plausible. It's not that likely, but it's not impossible either. Never fun when you would have just flopped a flush, but hey, we're not going to be too results orientated in those spots. Obviously, it's a trivial fold pre. We are going to get the ace and the jack in for an open on the 50NL table, though. This guy has been pretty active. As long as he hasn't moved table, as long as it's still the same guy, he's been pretty damn active. So let's see what the flop brings. We're going to check this board back, just because we're going to have the best hand here pretty often. So we're going to check back and pot control it a little bit. He just pots into us, we're not folding. I mean, his sizing makes no sense if he has value here, because like we've checked and we've shown weakness, so if he has value, why on earth would he be potting? We're going to call down. He has the toppest of the pairs, and he does decide to pot it, which, I mean, as I said, he got me, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. I think most people will just see a pot size bet there and fold. We look quite weak when we take that line, so if he's bluffing, it seems to make sense, but I guess he knew what level I was thinking on and just went with his read, or maybe he was just clicking buttons, who can say for sure. But we get caught out, which is never fun, but again, I mean, as I said, I'm putting myself in his shoes here. Like, I kind of think about how I look at situations, and a pot size bet there, if you have a value hand, doesn't make any sense to me, because I think you're going to get way too many folds. So I just don't understand why he'd do it. I guess to get called by ace high, though. We won't worry about it, though. We won't worry. And the 6-10 we ain't going to be defending. But we shall note that, and if we get involved in a similar spot against this guy, obviously we will be able to adjust our strategy. And that's essentially what all poker is. You have your basic strategy, you adjust said strategy against certain players when you have information to indicate that that is what you should do. And as long as you are happy with your all-round decision-making, then you should be able to turn a relatively tidy profit. We're going to 3-bet here with our ace blocker facing the button open. The only downside to this is that he can potentially think that we're just kind of tilting after the last hand a little bit. I mean, we have the ace blocker, and as I said, it's entirely plausible that that's what he thinks. Let's go for it. We're all in, dealer. Like, from these positions, if he's ever going to be 4-betting like this is the position that he does it in. So I think he overfolds here a decent chunk of the time, and we do get it through. We'll take it. We can always just go to plan B as well if we get called and just get there, which is always fun. But fortunately, we don't have to do that. And the queen and the jack, pretty trivial open here from the button, as will be the king and the jack offsuit. We get some action. We flop top pair with the second top kicker, which is a pretty reasonable flop all around. I mean, it's possible he has ace jack, I guess, but not all that likely, and he can have like pocket 2s and 4s, but in general, we're going to have the best hand here a overwhelmingly large majority of the time. He can also have tons of worse jack X and some floats in his range and some kind of middling pocket pairs that decides not to fold the flop, like pocket 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, all those kinds of hands that he doesn't want to 3-bet pre, that just sees a singular overcard and decides to go ahead and call. At least one street anyway. And I think there was a possible flush draw. Maybe I'm wrong on that, though. I'd need to go back and check the hand for sure. So we're coming into the last couple of minutes. Let's see if we can get a decent hand going before we wrap it up. A7 suited, we will be defending our blind a decent chunk of the time here. We'll see what unfolds before us though. As long as there's only a singular raise, our plan is to flat call. We're going to be defending our 5s here. We got the walk, we don't hate that. I mean, with the suited ace, it's going to be a decent spot anyway for us, but getting a walk is always pretty reasonable with those kinds of holdings. We're going to call, see a flop, and see if we can flop something fun. We do not. We still have the best hand here sometimes, obviously, but oh, that's a fun turn. We're going to check raise here. I think there's a very reasonable chance he decides to bet the turn here. So let's make it €4 to go. Our hand looks kind of bluffy here as well, so unfortunately he snap folds, though we pick up the extra euro by going for the check. And the problem with check calling there is that like the river is just going to be very, very tricky to play. Because like our range, it's just a very strange line. Like if we check call the turn and then we check to him on the river, I think he's going to be checking a huge chunk of his range there. So if we check call and then lead the river, it just looks so weird. Like it just doesn't really make too much sense. We might get looked up a little bit wide, but like I don't think crazy wide. And he can also have some draws that can only pay us on the turn if we raise. So we want to make sure that we do charge them if he ever has those types of hands. And by raising it, because it's a strange line, by check, when the flop goes check, check, and then we check, and then check, raise the turn, it's a very peculiar line, so he might think that we're bluffing and do something weird with a low equity hand. But unfortunately, he disappoints us, it doesn't. Good flop, obviously, with the top pair, second nut flush draw. We now have top trips with the second nut flush draw. We're going to bet again for value here. Unfortunately, he folds. And in the 3-bet pot here, we're going to bet our hand here because I just don't think it's very likely he decides to check his overpairs here on this board. And we do have like 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, all those types of hands. We don't have like the nutted overpairs, but we definitely have a decent chunk. And do we want to bluff here? No, we're going to check this back here. We are going to bet here though and just try to get him to fold ace high. I think it's entirely plausible he floats us here with ace highs. So we're just going to bet half pot, make it look like we're going for value. And hopefully he folds a hand like ace king, ace queen, ace jack, ace 10, those types of hands. Calls with the ace queen. As I said, that was the type of hand I was targeting. The fact that he calls us there doesn't mean that I completely disagree with my decision. I mean, I think his call there is somewhat optimistic. I think our line does look quite value heavy, but unfortunately we do get caught out, which seems to be a recurring trend so far today, which is never fun when you're constantly getting caught, but it's entirely possible I'm just over bluffing in certain spots in these games. I think they look like they are quite stationy. So maybe I should just be adjusting and kind of really, really reducing my bluffs to a huge degree, because we've definitely gotten caught out in a couple of spots where we lost some money that we probably didn't have to. But as I always say, if you don't get caught out bluffing, you're not bluffing enough. Or if you never get caught out bluffing, should I say. Obviously, it's nice when you get them through. But overall, let's have a quick look at the cashier. We have finished up down a little bit for the day, about €20 in total. Not a complete disaster, far from it. And as I said, you're always going to have some losing days, but hopefully the winning days are more frequent than the losing days, which is all you can ever hope for. And as I said, this has been Fergal from Poker VIP. I hope you have enjoyed watching. If you have any questions or queries or anything like that at all, feel free to leave the comments in the relevant social media, and I will endeavour to get back to you in due course. I guess we'll finish out this hand. We're going to check here because I don't think... Actually, I mean... Okay, when we pick up equity like this, we are going to fire again. Because, I mean, the chances of him checking his queens on the flop seem relatively low to me. And we do get that one through. Nice. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will chat to you all soon. Take care.